Hi everybody, my name is Molly and today I'm going to do a video covering the first dot point of the Legal Studies Area Study 1 and Unit 3 Study Design to start off the year, and hopefully I'll be making lots of videos to go through the content for extra revision, learning for the first time, another resource you might want to use during the year. So I'm going to start off with an introduction to the criminal justice system and, how is it different to civil law and the mindset you should be in when you're learning about criminal law and the type of vocab you should be using. And then the first dot point, which is the principles of justice, fairness, equality, and access. So if you've done Unit 1, 2 legal studies, you should be really familiar with these, but if not, that's okay. We're going to start from the very start, so you won't be missing out on anything. Okay, so the whole entire first area of study is all about criminal law, which is why it's really important to just cover the basics of these things. So criminal law is a branch of the Victorian legal system. So the Victorian legal system is not just about criminal law and charging people with crimes. There are other types of law, such as civil law with perhaps family law, defamation, negligence, constitutional law, lots of different things, but for now we're just focusing on criminal law. So a criminal case, it's a criminal case where normally there'll be a police investigation where they think a crime has happened. Once they have gathered enough evidence and they have reasonable belief that someone has committed a crime, this person will be charged with the crime. So for example, murder. The person charged with the crime will be called the accused. So that's a really major party in a criminal case. Then, before jumping into trial, there's lots of other stages beforehand. So pre-trial procedures that happen to make sure, for example, the accused is aware of the evidence being brought against them. They have a chance to talk with a lawyer if they have one. They'll be able to make their plea of guilty or not guilty as well. So we'll learn more about that later on. Then they will have the trial, and that is if they plead not guilty, they'll have a trial, maybe with a jury, not a jury. It depends on the type of offence that they've committed. We'll talk about that later as well. Then if they're found guilty, they'll go to sentencing where, for example, they might get a fine, they might be ordered to do community work through a CCO, or they might be sent to prison for a certain amount of time. So lots of different types of sentencing that we'll learn. So this is sort of just a broad overview of the different types of criminal cases, but if any of these are sort of involved in a case, you'll know that it's most likely going to be a criminal case. Criminal law varies state by state. So we have laws in Victoria specifically that relate to crime only within the state. So if you travelled to New South Wales, for example, if you were to kill someone, that still counts as murder, as a crime, but there might be different legal processes, different punishments and that sort of thing. So crime varies state by state. So we're just focusing on Victoria, obviously. So like I said, one party in a criminal case will be the accused, the person that is believed to have committed the offence. And then the other party is the prosecution. So the prosecution sort of is like the police, and they're representing the Crown, who is the Queen, because we're in the Queen's Commonwealth. But obviously the Queen doesn't sit down in the trial, so that's why the prosecution represents the Crown and the state on behalf of them instead. Okay, if you want, pause this video now and you can read through here for an example of a criminal procedure. So everything we've just talked about before with the pre-trial, the trial, the sentencing, but through sort of a hypothetical scenario. So feel free to pause and read through that. Okay, now we'll be looking at the principles of justice, which sometimes take people a bit of time to get their head around, but they're really important to learn because they will apply throughout the entire Unit 3 content that you learn. So that's why, don't worry if you don't grasp it straight away, but it's important that you keep coming back to it to make sure you can apply it to other bits of the content as well. Okay, so justice is a very broad and vague term that is quite hard to define, but it's important to think about. So you've probably heard lots of people saying, this achieves justice, or it's unjust, or things like that, but what does that actually mean? So justice essentially is the quality of being fair and reasonable. Specifically, we're thinking about in the law and in the courtroom. But obviously that can mean a lot of things depending on your personal beliefs and values. You might have, if you're the victim of a crime, your idea of justice is very different to the person that's been charged with a crime, instead. So it's important to think that justice is not black and white. It's very broad, and its meaning can change depending on someone's value. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're reading case studies and things like that. Then we have the idea of the rule of law as well. You might have heard of this. The rule of law is a principle that means that every single person in Victoria has to follow the law. So if the law says you can't assault a person, every single person will be bound by that law. It doesn't matter if you're our premier, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, a poorer person in society, a richer person, doesn't matter your background, who you are, where you come from. If you're a citizen of this state, everyone is bound to follow the law. So that's a really important principle, because if, for example, our government didn't have to follow the law, they might become really corrupt and justice wouldn't be achieved in those cases. So it's really important that we all follow the law in the same way. Okay, so the first principle of justice is fairness. So a lot of people get confused between fairness and equality, but I think this photo here that you might see in your textbook or something like that, I think it's a good representation of the difference between them. So fairness means having a fair case, which sort of is straightforward, but that means basically being treated impartially. So no one should be discriminated against, no one should be, everyone should be treated in sort of a just type of way. So for example, if we think about equality, which I'll skip ahead to here, equality means everyone being treated equally before the law. So if someone's being treated equally, every single person gets the exact same treatment no matter who they are. So that can often be a good thing. It means no one's being discriminated against based on their race or their gender, sexuality, disability, all of those things, which is a good thing. But if everyone's treated exactly the same way, think of this picture here on the left. So these three people here are treated the same way. They all have one box that's the same size. No one's given special advantages. No one's discriminated against. But you'll see that even though they get the same treatment, which is equal, they all have different outcomes. And that's not fair. That's not achieving justice, because this person here on the right can't see the game, right? So fairness is this picture on the right. And fairness means that sometimes people have to be treated differently in order to achieve the same outcome and a fair outcome. So all three people now have different treatment, but they all have the same outcome at the end, and that's what's really important. So if you ever get confused between fairness and equality, equality here is on the left. Equality can be a good thing, but here it doesn't achieve a just outcome. And then fairness here is on the right instead. Another example here is of equality. So all of these animals here are being told that everybody has to take the same exam, which seems equal, everyone's being treated the same way, but the exam is to climb this tree. So obviously if you are, for example, maybe like the bird or the monkey, you're not going to have any problem at all. You're going to climb right up that tree nice and easily, and that seems fair for you. But if you're, for example, the fish, you're going to have a lot more trouble trying to climb up that tree. So that's why it's really important that people might be needed to be treated differently, but we all get the same outcome at the end. And a real life example of that is the right to an interpreter. So not everybody needs an interpreter. If you speak English as your first language and it's fairly accessible to use the courts, you'll have no problem, you know, understanding what's going on. But if English maybe is your second or third language, or you don't speak English, or maybe, for example, if you're deaf or hard of hearing, you need an interpreter, so you're getting extra sort of special treatment, but everyone gets the same outcome in the end. You know, it doesn't mean they have special advantages. It just means they're sort of getting the same treatment as everyone else, making sure they're not disadvantaged in any way. Okay, and the third principle of justice is access. So access is a little bit different, and there's two parts. The first part is about being able to make use of the legal system. So what this means is, you know, if you are charged with a crime, you should be able to go to the courts without any interruption. So you should be able to go to your case and there's no delays, there's no extra costs that prevent you from, for example, having a lawyer and things like that. So actually, can you use the legal system effectively? And also all people, so no matter what party you are, if you're an accused, a victim, anything like that, maybe in the jury, everyone should understand their legal rights. So there's really good methods. For example, Victorian Legal Aid offers free information to people to make sure that they do understand their legal rights. So that's really important, to make sure you can access the justice system through understanding your rights and getting access to information. And if access isn't achieved, justice won't be achieved either. So it's very important that it is. All right, so thank you for watching this first video. I hope it was helpful, and there should be many more legal studies videos to come, also videos for revolutions and literature. So if you do any of those subjects, watch out. Feel free to leave any comments below and I will reply, whether they're content related, if you have requests for certain types of videos, and yeah, and please leave a like if you found it helpful, and best of luck for your year with all of your studying.